Thank you for listening to Curious Cat, a podcast that examines the shadowy space where science and the supernatural collide. I'm your host, Jennifer Holtz. Join me every week as I explore what it means to be a soul in a meat suit. Welcome to Curious Cat. Have you watched any of the Missing 411 movies? Former police officer David Paulides is the guy behind them. He has been collecting records for countless strange missing persons cases across the United States for years. Then he compiles the ones that have the same fact pattern and he puts them into books and movies. I've learned much from Paulides and the disappearances, from staying safe outdoors to always telling someone where you're going and when you expect to return, as well as place names. What do I mean? Well, he's noticed a pattern. The place names with, like, say, ape or devil or spirit in them, like, for example, Devil's Lake, Devil's Pass, Ape Canyon, Ape Lake, Spirit Lake. I could go on and on. There's an unusual amount of paranormal sightings in those areas, whether it be a Bigfoot or Dogman or Mothman or screaming Banshees or the like. The place names give away ancient secrets of the land. And that's what led me to this week's topic. I'll share about some of those pyramids and one strange pink pyramid that never came to fruition in Colorado. Let's get into it. As I was looking through images of pyramids across the globe, many in desert scapes or even overgrown in jungle flora, I came upon a batch of pyramids sticking out of lakes, and even stranger, pyramids in the United States. I was not taught about those in college. Let's take a look at some of them and a few of the chilling legends associated with those U.S. pyramids. Rock Lake, Wisconsin. Rock Lake lies in south central Wisconsin, about 20 miles east of Madison. Rock Lake is a 1,365-acre lake with a maximum depth of 60 feet. From Wikipedia, I found this. The lake shape resembles a slight figure 8 with several distinct areas. South of the figure 8 portion of the lake lies Bean Lake State Natural Area, which is a protected marsh. Part of the southwest part of the figure 8 is usually covered in tall aquatic vegetation that reach out of the water. In the northwestern portion of the figure 8, there's a sandbar which often has boats anchored and is swimming accessible. The pyramid claims Rock Lake is perhaps most famous for its underwater rock piles, frequently claimed to be pyramids built by the Mississippian culture at the time when water levels were much lower. Mounds shaped like pyramids exist 3 miles east of Rock Lake in Aztalan State Park in the Crawfish River in the town of Aztalan, Wisconsin. The park is a natural historic landmark. The mounds are thought to have been built by the Mississippian culture, and it is speculated that the site of Aztalan was a northern outpost of Cahokia, a much larger city in present-day Illinois. The waters of Rock Lake have been referred to as Tyranina. That name has persisted in the area and is used by businesses, road names, and a park that is on the lake. I had to know what Tyrannia means and found this. The legend of Tyrannia began long ago, some say 3,000 years or more, in a time before history was written. Legend tells of a foreign tribe that built a series of stone structures and effigy mounds on the edge of the lake they call Tyranina. Today, these structures lie preserved deep under the waters of Rock Lake. No one knows for sure who built them, the purposes they served, how and why they are now submerged, or even the meaning of the word Tyranina. Well, okay, I gave you a little hint to that earlier, but I'll Stop interrupting them. Well, here's more about Wisconsin's ancient Aztalan village from Wisconsin's Department of Natural Resources. Ancient Aztalan Village is a unique archaeological treasure of Native American culture and is one of the most important archaeological sites in Wisconsin. Aztalan showcases an ancient Middle Mississippian village and ceremonial complex that flourished between 1000 and 1200 AD. It is one of the northernmost outposts of the Middle Mississippian tradition. This tradition is most notable in west central Illinois at a site called Cahokia. And if you got goosebumps right there, I'll go into that in a little bit. Mound and stockade construction, house construction, pottery decoration, and agricultural practices are just a few of the similarities that exist between Aztalan and Cahokia, but there are differences. Although classical Middle Mississippian features exist, many artifacts belonging to the local woodland people are also present in large numbers. The people who settled in Aztalan built large, flat-topped pyramid mounds and a stockade around their village. They hunted, fished, and farmed on the floodplain of the Crawfish River. It is believed that the Aztalan Indians moved north to Wisconsin from the large mound settlement in Cahokia near St. Louis, Illinois. Following the Mississippi, Rock, and Crawfish rivers, they finally settled on the west bank of that Crawfish River near Lake Mills. The village prospered until 1200 AD, after which all the inhabitants left. The reason for this abandonment remains a mystery. As Aztalan became a state park in 1948, the site was designated a national landmark in 1964 and listed in the National Registry of Historic Places in 1966. Ancient Aztalan Village is owned by the DNR and was designated a state natural area in 2003. I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention the Pyramid Lake in California. It is a man-made lake, opened in 1973, and was named Pyramid Lake for the pyramid the builders cut into the stone beneath the waters when this reservoir was initially created. So nothing mystical to see here, at least not as of yet. Not to be mistaken with California's not really mystical Pyramid Lake comes Nevada's Pyramid Lake and Stone Mother. From Native America travel, North America's most beautiful desert lake, Pyramid Lake, as formed by the tears of Stone Mother, who wept so long and profusely for her exiled children that her tears filled up the lake. According to Paiute legend, she sat so long that she turned to stone, and there she still sits today, her basket next to her. Located 35 miles northeast of Reno, Nevada, Pyramid Lake is the property of and managed by the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe. The lake covers 112,000 acres in the reservation boundary, and the scenery is spectacular. The color of Pyramid Lake changes from shades of blue or gray, depending on the sky above. Pyramid Lake is also surrounded by unusual rock formations, representing some of Earth's most spectacular tufa deposits. The pyramid-shaped island called Wono in Paiute, meaning cone-shaped basket, is one such deposit. Most of the tufas formed between 26,000 and 13,000 years ago. Today, Pyramid Lake is part of the National Scenic Byways program and the only byway in the country located entirely within a tribal reservation. Pyramid Lake is the only habitat in the world for the QU fish that has been around for over 2 million years. The Pyramid Lake fishery includes the famous Lohontan cutthroat trout that have grown to record sizes and have lured fishermen from around the world over for several decades. Aside from fishing, visitors can also obtain a permit for camping, kayaking, stand-up paddleboarding, mountain biking, and hiking. Visitors can get a sense of the Pyramid Lake's importance to the tribe with a trip to the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe Museum and Visitor Center. The multi-purpose museum features several exhibits and displays about the tribe's culture and history, the natural history of Pyramid Lake, and why the Paiute people hold it in such esteem. The center also has artwork produced by tribal members for sale. We need to talk about the curse of the Pyramid Lake water babies. Is this even true? I don't know, but I found it on the internet. So that makes it probably extra sketchy. And there's an author's note. What follows is the first of a two-part story about a trip I took, not me, but the author, in the spring to Pyramid Lake outside Sparks, Nevada. The mood changed in an instant from the usual smiles and light banter to horrified looks and stern warnings. I was working at the Nevada legislature, having lunch with two colleagues. It was a deadline week to remain alive. Bills needed to be out of committee by midnight that Friday. Although the committees don't always go to midnight, I needed to be available. The legislature also had a full schedule of proceedings starting early the following Monday. Jennifer and Shelley knew that it would be practically impossible for me to go home and that I would be stuck in Nevada that weekend. We were at one of Jennifer's favorite restaurants, Smiles and All. Jennifer asked, "What are you doing this weekend when you're here by yourself?" "I won't be here by myself. My friend Dan is driving up and we're going fishing at Pyramid Lake." The smile left Jennifer's face, replaced by a look of genuine concern. "Don't you know about Pyramid Lake?" "Of course I do," I said, most of my smile remaining. "It's world-renowned for its low-haunted cutthroat trout. People routinely catch fish over 15 pounds. I'm going after one with my Zebco." "No," she said, looking both directly at me and through me. "There is something bad about that lake. People die out there every year and they never find the bodies. Please don't go." "That's nonsense," I said. "No, really, Mark. The lake is cursed." Shelley had joined the conversation and she looked as concerned as Jennifer. "You shouldn't go." "I've already paid the guide, so unless the weather turns bad, I'm going." In unison, the ladies said, "I hope the weather is bad." I thought about their warnings all afternoon. These are two highly educated professionals. Sure, they had both grown up in the area, and I had no doubt they knew about the lake, but a deadly curse, come on. I did some research that night and learned a number of things about Pyramid Lake. It's in the heart of the Pyramid Lake Paiute Reservation. The Paiute tribe regulates all aspects of fishing and recreational activities on the lake. It has a surface area of approximately 112,000 acres and is 350 feet deep at its deepest point. It's a terminal lake, meaning it has an inlet but no true outlet. There are a number of underwater shelves, caves, and other structures that cannot be seen from the surface. Wind conditions on the lake can be harsh. Wind speed and direction often change suddenly and dramatically. Because of the wind, the underwater structures, and the lack of an outlet, currents on the lake are varied and unpredictable. That explained it. Pyramid Lake is big and deep with tricky winds and currents. It's home to a rare species of giant trout, so it attracts fisher people from around the world, willing to do stupid things for a shot at catching one. No wonder the lake has more than its share of tragedies. I couldn't wait to lecture Jennifer and Shelley. Except there's more. As the story goes, many years ago, the Paiutes would put their deceased babies in the lake in order to pass them along, say goodbye. The ghosts of these babies can allegedly be heard crying and wailing throughout the lake, especially in the early morning and evening hours, and particularly during the spring prime fishing times for those prized trouts. The water babies are a vengeful bunch, reportedly responsible for calamities calamities, ranging from equipment malfunctions to boating accidents to disappearances. Some accounts say that they target fishermen, lurking just below the surface, waiting for the opportunity to seize and drown those that get too close to the water. Other accounts are less dramatic, saying that if you hear or see a water baby, you will be cursed with bad luck. You might think that after learning all of this, I called the guide and canceled. You would be wrong. Giant trout and mean-spirited ghosts? Are you kidding me? How could it get any better? I was more excited than ever to fish the lake, but I felt compelled to learn more about the legend. Like all fishermen, I'm superstitious. The last thing I need is an even hint of bad luck. So if there was any truth to the legend, I needed to be knowledgeable. The first thing I wanted to know was whether the Paiutes give any credence to the idea that the lake is cursed. To me, the existence of a curse is far more plausible if the Paiutes believe it. I had read conflicting reports on the Paiutes' beliefs, so I set out the next day to talk to my friend Steve. Steve is the president and general counsel for a large land and water resource development company. He loves to fish, has extensive knowledge of the area, and has negotiated with the Paiute tribe over water rights in the Pyramid Lake Basin. Steve, is the Pyramid Lake cursed? He said, I can't say for sure one way or the other. Strange things happen out on the reservation. Steve laughed a little as he told me this. Do the Paiutes believe in the curse? Steve's expression changed and he said seriously, look, be careful. The Paiutes believe in some crazy stuff. Just stick close to your guide and do what he says. We left early the next morning to meet our guide at a store on the edge of the reservation. The store is a stopping point for most everyone who fishes the lake. It's one of the few places you can buy the required tribe-issued permit. As I paid for my permit, I asked the clerk if she thought the lake was cursed by water babies. Without hesitation, she replied, absolutely. When I was a kid, I nearly drowned 3 separate times. You want some coffee with that permit? A fisherman in line behind me overheard this and pulled me aside. I fished the lake for years. Trust me, the water babies only get people who are drunk or stupid. Pay attention to the conditions and don't push it if the wind comes in. Dan and I walked into the parking lot to find our guide. Glenn was just as he had been described over the phone, a big guy with a buzz haircut and a burly black beard. We learned later that Glenn was a retired military police officer who served a number of tours in Iraq. He told us he was a door kicker, the guy who kicked in the doors as we entered to clear buildings. He carried himself like a former door kicker, getting right to the point. If you guys have your permits, let's get going. We're 20 minutes from the boat ramp. With as much confidence and nonchalance as I could muster, I said, I have 2 questions. First, I want to catch a cutthroat trout on my Zebco. Can you make that happen? And second, how worried do we need to be about the water babies? Glenn's eyes narrowed. He looked intently at me for what seemed like an uncomfortable amount of time, so long that I thought he might be contemplating faking engine problems so he didn't have to fish with such a moron. His expression lightened a little and he said, you won't have any problems with the water babies as long as you do good and respect the resources the lake has to offer. He studied me a little longer and then he smiled. What pound test do you have on that Zebco? I smiled and returned 10. He nodded. That'll work. And with that, we got in our vehicles and headed down the road to Pyramid Lake, the rising sun turning the desert floor a pale orange color. I thought to myself, do good and respect the resources. That should be easy enough. Little did I know. As we drove towards Pyramid Lake, I said to Dan, too bad we didn't start earlier. I've heard that the lake's rock formations, especially the iconic Pyramid Rock, are breathtaking right at dawn and again as the sun goes down. Dan responded without any real emotion. Yeah, but didn't you tell me that the water babies are most active at dawn and dusk? No, seriously, I said. The lake is known as much for its beauty as for its giant trout. In fact, people from around the world have seen the lake, even though they've never been here. Apple used a photo of the lake as a default screensaver on its original iPads. We crested a hill and the lake came into view below us. I wasn't sure about giant trout or water babies, but there was no doubt we were going to get our money's worth of scenery. The lake was indeed breathtaking. Sky blue water, as smooth as glass, stretched from shore to shore. The rock formations along the opposite shore were bathed in a reddish-orange hue. About 2/3 of the way across the lake, the pyramid rock jutted through the surface. It somehow avoided the color of the other formations, seemingly giving off its own brown, gray, blue light. It was probably just my imagination, but it felt like the rock was trying to tell us something. We parked near the boat launch and Glenn began to get the boat and gear ready. I wandered over to a bulletin board near the restroom. There was a weather-worn poster tacked to the middle. It contained pictures of 2 middle-aged men and the word missing in large red letters across the top. The poster also contained these words: Johnson's truck and empty boat trailer were found on 5/12/17 at Pyramid Lake. Later, we asked about the men at the ranger station. The Paiute woman who ran the station told us that the men were still missing, but that the families had not given up hope. She also freely shared lots of other information about the lake, its history, Paiute traditions, and the surrounding area. But when I asked her about the water babies, she got very cold and very quiet. All she would say was, "I have no information about that." When we returned to the boat, Glenn laid out his plan. We would use spinning weights and line-counting Okuma reels to troll lures at depths ranging from 20 to 40 feet. Line-counting reels are exactly what they sound like. They measure line as it's released from the reel, allowing the fishermen to keep accurate count of how much line is in the water. These particular Okuma reels were big and beefy, designed to withstand the torque of pulling large lures and hopefully large fish through deep water. They were roughly twice as big as my Zebco. Glenn explained that we would fish with 3 lines in the water. 1 Okuma would be set on each side of the boat. Dan and I would each be responsible for one of those lines. We would also set the Zebco up behind the boat. The Okumas would run at the deeper depths and the Zebco at 10 to 15 feet. Glenn's lure of choice was called a flatfish. Flatfish are arc-shaped, cylindrical for most of their length, but with that flat face where the lure attaches to the line. The face causes the lure to wobble violently as it moves through the water. I have other lures, Glenn said, but this time of year, nothing works as well as the flatfish. As we motored to our first fishing spot, I got to learn more about Glenn. After his military service, he found it difficult to hold down indoor jobs. Guiding, he said, was really the only option for keeping his sanity, and it suited him well, allowing him to combine his love of the outdoors and his extensive knowledge of the lake and the surrounding areas. I asked Glenn again about the water babies. "I've never seen an actual water baby," he said, "but I have seen a number of inexplicable things on the sonar. Images appear out of nowhere on the screen and then suddenly disappear." I was beginning to wonder if this was all part of some show. Maybe there was a conspiracy among those who have a financial interest in the lake to perpetuate stories about curses and other weird things. But Glenn spoke about the images on his sonar with the same ease and candor that he displayed when talking about his rough transition back into civilian life. If he was part of the show, he should have gone into acting. And who would fake missing posters just to promote financial interests? Glenn's voice yanked me from those thoughts. And when you set the hook, set it firmly, but only once. I get a lot of bass fishermen who are used to getting the hook twice in order to get it firmly embedded in the fish's mouth. Don't do that here. You'll lose the trout every time. The boat slowed and Glenn said, "Here we are. Let's get those lines in the water. Start by letting out 30 feet. After just a few minutes of trolling, Glenn boomed, "Fish on!" The tip of Dan's rod bent violently, straightened out, and then bent again. Dan stood up, removed the rod from its holder, and pulled back to set the hook. "Good," Glenn said. "Keep pressure on him and reel steady." Dan pulled back on the rod again. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he wasn't trying to set the hook again, but rather he was just following Glenn's instructions to keep pressure on the fish. Glenn must have thought otherwise because he sighed loudly. After a short fight, Dan had the fish near the boat. There was a brief silver flash as the fish turned and dove. It didn't look particularly big to me, but Glenn said, "That's a good size one, over 10 pounds. Just as Glenn reached for the net, the line went slack. There was a touch of frustration in his voice. "Remember, only one hook set." We resumed trolling. It wasn't long before the rod on my side doubled over. I grabbed it and set the hook. Then, out of sheer habit, I fish for bass a lot. I set the hook again. The line went immediately slack. "Okay, new rule," Glenn said. "Don't set the hook at all. Just reel it in fast." When Dan got hit again, he followed the new rule and he had no trouble landing the fish. The trouble began after we had it on board. The trout, a 9-pounder, was all muscle. All of us were taking pictures and it powered its way out of Dan's hands, bounced a couple of times on the deck. We had that fish out of the water way longer than any of us wanted, but to our relief, it swam strongly away when we released it. Over the next 5 hours, we settled into a rhythm and caught 5 more trout, including 3 on my tiny Zebco. Although none were trophies, they totaled more than 30 pounds. Finally, Glenn said, "There's one more spot I want to try before we call it quits, near where they release fish from the hatchery. It's shallower and we might be able to land one more on the Zebco." As Glenn slowed the boat to set up the trawl line, I noticed a tumbleweed floating in the water, maybe 30 yards away. I thought, I haven't seen any other tumbleweeds all day, either in the water or on the shore. I was about to ask Dan and Glenn if they saw it, but it sank suddenly below the surface. "Fish on the Zebco," Glenn's voice was filled with a mixture of pride and humor. I don't know whether that fish fought harder than the rest we caught that day, or if my Zebco was just worn out, but the trout was exhausted when we got it aboard. I should have known better than to risk taking pictures, but we were all caught up in the moment. I dropped him twice before getting a picture of the two of us smiling together. To make matters worse, I lost my grip while trying to revive him in the water. As he floated away, I felt terrible, and I told Glenn so. Glenn tried to make me feel better. That fish was pretty beat up from being worked over in the hatchery. I could see the wounds on his sides. He wasn't long for this world, even if you hadn't caught him. As I contemplated this, Glenn said, "I can see his fins moving. I think he'll make it. And if he doesn't, he'll provide a good meal to the pelicans. He will not be wasted." I knew Glenn was right. Fish sometimes die no matter how carefully you handle them. To be a fisherman, you have to be willing to accept this. But I didn't feel any better. Fish fatalities always cause me anguish, even when we plan to eat them. "There, he's gone down," Glenn said. I saw it too. The trout finally righted itself and swam away. On shore, we thanked Glenn for the great day of fishing and headed back to our places in Carson City. Exhausted, I slept well that night. 3 days later, while trying to guard a larger and much more skilled player in a basketball game, I took an elbow to the mouth, a hard elbow, so hard that I thought my jaw might be broken, so hard that I developed a sinus infection, then an abscess, then a nagging toothache. When I finally got around to seeing a dentist months later, he took one look in my mouth and said, "That tooth is unrecoverable. It is split vertically from the crown to the root. We don't see that very often. We have to remove it right away." I suppose there are 3 possible explanations for why I got a cracked tooth just days after fishing Pyramid Lake. Number 1, what I saw in the water wasn't a tumbleweed. Number 2, my handling of that last fish wasn't respectful enough of the lake's resources. Number 3, the incidents are unrelated. Given the amount of basketball I play and my general lack of defensive skills, it's a wonder I have any teeth at all. I'm inclined to believe the latter explanation, but you never know. After all, they're still looking for those missing men. Let's pivot toward the most famous pyramid in the United States. SailingStoneTravel.com has a great article, Cahokia, the Forgotten Pyramid of Illinois, which tells the story of the United States' most famous pyramid. Many Americans are shocked to learn that their country is home to an ancient pyramid that stands as tall as 100 feet. Mysteriously, the fascinating history of Cahokia and its Monk's Mound Pyramid aren't covered in most schools. Be that as it may, Cahokia was the largest pre-Columbian urban settlement north of the Rio Grande, and at its peak it even had a bigger population than London at the time. Cahokia started developing in the 10th century, and it became the most important settlement to the Mississippian culture from around the year 1050. Over the course of a couple centuries, Cahokia's population would grow to as large as 40,000 people, and throughout their city, which took up an area of around 6 square miles, the Cahokians built hundreds of mounds. While the Cahokians left behind no written records, we know that the city was a thriving center of trade. It's located just outside of modern-day St. Louis, while various materials found at that site come from as far as the Gulf Coast and the Great Lakes. But for some reason, by around the year 1400, the city was mysteriously abandoned. There's still a lot we don't know about the ancient metropolis, but the city's layout reveals a highly advanced knowledge of astronomy and geometry. Today, despite its relative obscurity, getting to the Cahokia Mounds is surprisingly easy. The site is a relatively short drive from St. Louis, while a tour around the mounds shouldn't take more than half a day. Now let's talk about the largest pyramid in the United States. Called Monk's Mound, it is truly colossal, at roughly the same size at its base as the Great Pyramid of Giza. It also lies in the pyramid city of Cahokia, which is home to more than 1,200 pyramid structures. Monk's Mound has been measured and is larger than the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan in Mexico. The pyramid is believed to contain as many as 22 million cubic feet of adobe, carried basket by basket to the site. In North America, Native American cultures erected large pyramid structures that are known as pyramid platform mounds. The best example of such architecture is located in present-day Illinois, where a monument known as the Monk's Mound stands proud and tall. Completed around 1100 AD and larger than the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza, although perhaps not as elaborate in terms of precision and design, Monk's Mound is a structure worthy of praise. Analysis of such sites as Cahokia have helped experts understand that various ancient mounds underwent repetitive episodes of construction spread out across periodic intervals. The settlement of Cahokia was already an influential metropolis and a large settlement of importance of the Mississippian region. The city we call Cahokia today was actually called differently in the past. However, because of the lack of finding any written records, we don't really know what its original inhabitants called the city. The name we use today to refer to the Pyramid Mound City comes from the Cahokia tribe, a historic people occupying the area when the first French colonists arrived in the 17th century. Although the ancient culture that inhabited Cahokia is long gone, its monuments, devoured by nature, remain and are considered some of the largest, most sophisticated sites in North America, comparable nearly to structures built by neighboring ancient cultures to the south in present-day Mexico. Turning back to the largest of those pyramids, Monk's Mound Pyramid. So although the city of Cahokia boasted many pyramids, none was as massive and complex as Monk's Mound. It's thought that the construction began around 900 CE and was built in various phases until it became the largest pre-Columbia earthwork in America and the largest pyramid north of the stone pyramids of Mexico. The exact size of Monk's Mound has been calculated multiple times, and in 1988 it was said to measure 100 feet high, 950 feet long, and 775 feet wide. Despite its current massive size, experts argue that the original concept may have been a much smaller mound. This pre-structure is now believed to be buried inside the northern end of Monk's Mound. Studies of Monk's Mound suggest that as many as 10 different construction phases were needed to complete the structure. When the pyramid mound was completed, its builders constructed an additional temple-like residence on its summit. This building made Monk's Mound even taller, and the structure was visible across the city. Unlike the pyramids of Egypt, which are thought to have been made as tombs, the pyramid mounds of Cahokia were most likely used for ceremonial and political purposes. Monk's Mound, although not built of stone, is still very complex. It rises 4 terraces to a height of 100 feet. It contains 22 million cubic feet of adobe. The material is believed to have been carried to the site basket by basket, which is bananas. The most recent addition to Monk's Mound is thought to have been made around 1200 CE when its builders added the lower terraces at the monument's southern end. Monk's Mound, together with different, albeit smaller mounds, and no other ancient settlement in North America can be compared in terms of architecture and complexity to Cahokia. If you've never heard of it before, I really encourage you to Google Cahokia. It's pretty shocking that this is the Midwest. This happened. It blew my mind. It is redefining in my brain what I was told in school to be the history of our country. It's so much more complicated than what they put in those books. The decline of the city and the society of Cahokia remain shrouded in mystery. It's usually agreed that the city declined around 1300 CE. However, new studies have revealed a very different picture. Archaeologists from UC Berkeley have challenged the narrative that we have been accustomed to. History suggests that by the 1400s, the city was abandoned as a series of floods, droughts, and other natural catastrophes struck the region. However, the recent study points to the fact that the exodus may have been very short-lived and that the city, its pyramid mounds, and the surrounding area flourished well into the 1700s. Scholars usually maintain that by the time of European contact, the city was already abandoned. However, the new evidence, it points towards a different timeline, one that suggests that the pyramid city of North America endured for longer than what historians initially thought. I teased at the top about a pink pyramid of Colorado. Yeah, it was planned for, but it never happened. From ColoradoCentralMagazine.com comes this, a Crestone Pyramid update. The writer, Peter Anderson, states, the nightmare would begin something like this. From the western flank of the Sangres, I'm looking down on my home territory, out across the wind-swept savanna of the St. Louis Valley toward the usual landmarks, San Antonio Mountain and the South San Juans off to the southwest, the La Garita Range to the west, even a few of the great Sawatch Peaks off to the north, but there's a new mountain in the foreground. No, not a mountain. It's a man-made pyramid, a pink pyramid, 400 feet tall. What the? Fortunately, many residents of Crestone Baca said no to this nightmare 20 years ago. In a brilliant article that appeared in Colorado Central Magazine in April of 1994, Martha Quillen documented the proposed pink pyramid and its local resistance movement that took shape to prevent it. What Martha found when she came to a hearing about the Pink Pyramid project 2 decades ago was a place more complex than any of the usual Crestone stereotypes might suggest. Yes, there was and is an openness to those of different spiritual persuasions here, but that had and has its limits. 20 years ago, Crestonians turned down a project that likely would have transformed this community into a spiritual amusement park, or worse, a kind of metaphysical Walmart. Think Sedona, Arizona times 10. Here's how it all went down. Barbara Milanovich, an Albuquerque woman who claimed to be a channel for an ascended master named Cthulhu, wanted to build a 400-foot-high pink pyramid, which she and others claimed would, quote, serve as an antenna to induce a standing column wave of tachyon energy, end quote, thereby helping the enlightened, quote, from the third into the fifth dimension. Cthulhu had apparently let her know that this pyramid would be the 12th wonder of the world. One pyramid supporter, and there were a few in Crestone, enthusiastically predicted that the pyramid would make Crestone into another Mecca or Jerusalem. In her article, Martha reported that / no pyramid signs welcomed Milanovich on the road into Baca, where she was greeted with a petition signed by 140 residents asking her not to build in the valley. That was a big number, considering the entire population of Crestone and Baca Grande at that time was somewhere between 450 and 600 people, according to different estimates I've heard. The number of pyramid opponents was even more impressive considering the lack of work in the area. Supporters of the project were quick to remind locals that pyramid construction would bring much needed jobs, a familiar pitch made by developers and industrialists who show up in poor rural communities, promising all sorts of economic salvation. Cthulhu himself apparently said via his channel that Crestonians were the blessed keepers of a sacred vortex on which the pyramid needed to be built. Ooh, that's very charming. Responding to his celestial flattery, those who organized the petition drive chose to respond using some of Cthulhu's own metaphysical lingo. We, the blessed keepers of the sacred vortex, the petition read, do not believe the pyramid should be built here. Ultimately, local resistance won out. Had it gone the other way, I doubt I would have moved here. As it turned out, Crestone has become more old age than new age, as others have rightly said, meaning the spiritual demographic, Christian, Hindu, and most significantly over the last decade, Buddhist, has more to do with traditions that have been around for a while. In her article, Martha pointed out that the same resistance in Crestone that fought off the Pink Pyramid said no to other proposals, a New Age center promoted by Shirley MacLaine, Air Force flyovers, oil and gas leases on adjacent public lands, and selfish schemes to sell off valley water resources, among others. Not only was that resistance intended to keep the community from becoming something locals didn't want it to become, it was also about preserving a quality of life that was and is found here. If there is an ethos connecting the many seekers who are drawn to the spiritual traditions represented in Crestone, including those I haven't noted, not to mention residents who live outside of any spiritual category or tradition, I would call it contemplative, meaning many of those who live here are drawn to a measure of silence, solitude, and freedom to practice their practice, whatever that may be. Another way to put it is that we're a community made up of mystics, misfits, and mountain dwellers. I'm grateful to the old timers around here who helped to make and keep it so. Thanks for listening to Curious Cat. Remember to hang on until after the music for another Curious Cue. Until next week, stay curious. I love you. Welcome to the super secret part of Curious Cat this week. I realized after I wrapped this episode, there was one United States pyramid I neglected to mention, and it is a rabbit hole I encourage you to go down. It's the Pyramid of Alaska. It was revealed after allegedly, China set off a nuclear bomb to see the structure of the world, like where there were structures across the globe. And within a 4,000-mile zone of this explosion, they detected a pyramid in Alaska. People have speculated that it is an alien creation or an alien artifact that used to serve as some giant power source for them. So I'm adding a clip from YouTube about the explosion and what it revealed. And I hope you have fun going down that rabbit hole. I swear this is it this week. Love you.
I was sitting there watching TV in the orderly room, and there's a news program on. And they're talking about the detonation of a nuclear device in China. Part of the story was that geologists used that detonation to get a better picture of the crust and mantle of the Earth.
The news report stated that the explosion was so great that it sent shockwaves underground through the fabric of the Earth. These shockwaves traveled over 4,000 miles all the way to Alaska, where they were picked up by earthquake monitoring stations. By analyzing these waves, scientists could tell the density of the rock they passed through. And they detected what appeared to be an enormous subterranean structure shaped like a perfect pyramid.
They said in Alaska, a pyramid was found, larger than the one in Giza.
It's time for the Curious Q, a quick rundown of the week's weirdest headlines. From Fox News, school picture photographer loses job after allegedly asking young students, "Can I eat your soul?" Daniela Wallace writes, a photographer at Chittum Elementary in Chesapeake was escorted off campus for, quote, inappropriate comments to students, end quote. She explains, a Virginia elementary school photographer reportedly lost her job after being accused of making improper remarks to young students, including allegedly asking one boy, "Can I eat your soul?" The principal of Chittum Elementary School in Chesapeake, Bridget Outlaw, said in an email to parents last week that a photographer hired to take school pictures was escorted off campus for making inappropriate comments to students. WTKR reported the photographer, who was not named by school or company officials, was employed by LifeTouch, a family and school photography service owned by Shutterfly. I would say Monopoly at this point, because I know that name right from years of writing checks. In an interview, parent Rachel Fjeld told WTKR that her son was sitting to have his school picture taken when the photographer allegedly asked him, "Can I steal your identity? And can I eat your soul?" You can say all the things you want to say about good versus evil, God versus the devil or demons or whatever, but at the end of the day, what was said was not funny and it wasn't okay. It was a child in an uncomfortable situation, Fjeld said. I know people are trying to say, "Oh, she's just joking. It was just funny," but it's not funny. It's not. And what that doesn't do is put any child at ease. It just scares them. She asked him, "Can I steal your identity?" His response was just no. Her next question was, "Can I eat your soul?" And when he was expressing it to us, he was crying. He was very upset. And he said, no, Fjeld said of the exchange between her son and the photographer. Her next question was, "Well, then what can I eat?" And he told me, he said, "Mommy, I didn't know what to say. So I said the first thing that came to my mind, you can have noodles. You can eat noodles." And her response, "Demons don't eat noodles." The mother, who initially sounded the alarm about the alleged remarks in a since privatized Facebook post, also thanked the elementary school for their swift responses. It went to the principal, who was amazing, I will say. The school handled it. We are so appreciative. They were very quick. They immediately escorted her off the premises. They called us, Fjeld told the outlet. Once the comments were reported, school administration immediately addressed the issue, and this individual was escorted off school property. Parents of students who reported the concern were notified. We want to commend our students for quickly reporting the incident, Outlaw said. We are thankful that our message of seeing something, saying something was effectively used in this situation. On Friday, a Shutterfly spokesperson told WTKR that the photographer involved in the incident was no longer employed as a photographer by LiveTouch, and an internal investigation is underway. The next headline comes from betus.com, top UFO hotspots in the U.S. and where to watch the skies. Are you wondering if your city is listed? Here's the story. Our fascination with UFOs taps into our innate curiosity about the unknown. According to the Pew Research Center, 65% of Americans believe that intelligent life exists on other planets. The luck and rarity of a UFO sighting further fuels our obsession and creativity. That's so true. We've created a one-stop guide to reveal where in the U.S. you're most likely to spot a UFO. By analyzing data from the National UFO Reporting Center, we were able to find the most common months, locations, and times you are most likely to see a UFO. Sourcing data goes back all the way to 2013. Ranked number 1 with 323 incidents, Phoenix, Arizona. Second, New York, New York with 313 incidents. Third on that list, Las Vegas, Nevada. Fourth, Portland, Oregon. Fifth, Tucson, Arizona. Sixth, with 236 sightings, Boise, Idaho. Coming in seventh with 222 incidents, Los Angeles, California. Eighth, San Diego, California. 9, Albuquerque, New Mexico. 10, Seattle, Washington, holding a very proud 209 incidents. And coming in 11th, Orlando, Florida, with 201 incidents. Visit BETUS with the link below to search for your city in their extensive list. Our last stories are marked in a mixed basket. The first comes with an apology because I wish I'd shared this with you 3 weeks ago, but at least you can pencil it onto your 2025 calendar. You see, since 2016, the last Saturday of September has been designated National Ghost Hunting Day in 7 countries. People who are interested in seeking out spirits from the other side can go to the official website and find which hunts are happening near them or watch numerous live streams. What if no ghosts show up? Okay, no problem. Still feel good for having done a quote, good deed for the day, end quote, since money from the tickets goes toward preserving landmark buildings where the hunts take place. Another mixed bag ghost story reminds us not to forget our crystals. Ghost hunters bring a lot of gear when setting out on their nocturnal missions. They sometimes include crystals that are believed to have properties that can ward off spirits from the beyond. Some examples: chalcedony, which absorbs negative energy and was used by ancient Egyptians to ward off ghosts. Jet, that protects against negativity. Peridot helps balance out emotions, and it is helpful when investigating a haunted house. Smoky quartz provides calm and tranquility, which you need some of when you're looking for ghosts. I don't know about you, but this is a huge excuse for me to head down to my favorite rock shop and get a couple more samples. And our next final mixed bag tidbit for the week: have you ever heard of a force ghost? Force, yes, Force. This is the term that has been given in the Star Wars universe to practitioners of the mystical power known as the Force, who after their death appear to the living as ghostly apparitions and who sometimes even communicate. Okay, I just stumbled on an actual final mixed bag morsel titled The Ghost Brothers. In the 1990s, Indiana-born rock star John Mellencamp bought a vacation camp a few miles from Bloomington. After being told by the sellers that they thought the place was haunted, he laughed. But Mellencamp said he was spooked enough by the spirit of the place that he stayed only a few nights before selling it. He discovered the reason for the cabin's creepy mood decades later. Two brothers had fought over a girl there. One brother died after being hit in the head with a fireplace poker. The other brother and the girl took off, but died in a car accident not far away. The incident might have cost Mellencamp a vacation cabin, but it provided inspiration. He took that nugget of a story, changed its location to Mississippi, and with Stephen King, turned it into the 2012 musical called Ghost Brothers of Darkland County. Now that's a musical even my dad would have enjoyed. Thanks for getting weird with me. Catch the headlines next week on the Curious Q. Until then, stay curious and keep it weird. I love you.
Hey, you. Yes, you. Are you looking for a new podcast that appeals to your scientific curiosity, but is also a little bit spooky?
Show me how I died in a past life.
Well, look no further, because this cat is where it's at.
He had concerns about the ethics surrounding AI, feeling they had achieved consciousness.
Curious Cat Podcast examines the shadowy space where science and the supernatural collide. Listen every week with your host, Jennifer Holtz, as she and her guests explore what it means to be a soul in a meat suit.
We were healing karma together. They were all kind of predestined to resolve something.
Listen on all your favorite streaming apps and continue the conversation on Twitter at CuriousCatPodCA, or find Jennifer and all her links at Jennifer L. Holtz, spelled HOTES.com.